Jami Dennis, I'm really happy to have you as the next guest on the Geospatial Index. It's the start of, I guess, a mini-series where I begin to investigate what it's like to do GIS in America. Thanks, Jami, for getting on board and helping with some guidance here.
Happy to be here.
All right, so I feel very lucky because as we've just been discussing, you have some involvement with the GIS Certification Institute.
Yeah, I'm on the board of directors.
Okay.
So I don't have any input on the questions. I'm not on the exam development part, but we do have a committee on there. So yes, I'm on the board of directors for the GIS Certification Institute. I represent NISGIC, which is the National States Geographic Information Council, which is made up of like the GIS communities for each of the states here in the U.S. So they're NISGIC itself, the governing body, is a member of GIS Certification Institute. So I represent them.
Wow. Okay. Slightly more complex of an organization that I'm used to dealing with.
Yeah. So anyways, it's interesting. I've been on there 3 years. They just appointed me for another 3-year term.
Wow.
And so it's been very interesting to see the progression and working to promote certification for the industry, because it's a worldwide certification, and the goal is to get more GIS professionals to help build the industry, to help support the industry, and just help support geospatial professionals. So it's been really great. So I can answer any questions on that if you want, or try to.
Yeah, definitely. I guess I've got some inevitable questions there, like how many members are there? How old is the organization? What are some highlights from its history?
Okay, well, that's great without looking it up, because I don't have the whole history memorized of what year it started. But no, that's okay. So, it was born out of URISA. So if you're familiar with URISA, the Urban Regional.
I've heard of it.
Urban Regional. Okay, so they're another geospatial professional body, a community. It's more of a community where you become a member of, you're a paying member of URISA, and they're formed as a nonprofit. So having a certification came about, I want to say probably in the late 90s. They needed to have something to show that your expertise as you become more involved in the field, you get more experience, you get more education, that sort of thing. And so so the certification program was born out of URISA essentially, and now it's a separate nonprofit group.
Yeah.
Originally, it was completely portfolio based, which meant it was, which was how I became a GISP. It was based on you had to have certain amount of education and experience and contributions back to the community, to the profession. And so those 3 things are still part of it today. However, now there's an exam. So it evolved into having an exam base, which is pretty rigorous, and it's you have to study. It's not impossible to pass. And we're being on the board, we're working hard to try to get more resources to prepare people to take this exam, because it's tough. It's a certification thing. So we have a exam development committee made up of subject matter experts, and they meet and go over these exams. We have a psychometrician that reviews all these to make sure everything's statistically accurate and it's testing really well. So it's it's a serious step, and you need to have that if you want to have, it's a professional certification. You don't just, if it was easy, everybody'd be a GISP, and then it wouldn't really be worth it.
Sure. So roughly how long do people take studying for the exam? Do you know?
It kind of varies.
Or advise, I should say.
Yeah. I would advise, if people are going to take, there's the next exam, we have exams in June and December. Some people start a year ahead. I think 6 months is probably good, because it just kind of depends. Most people are also working a full-time job, so you're not going to be studying that entire length, but there's all these different components to it. And we have the blueprint out there, so you can see what the different knowledge knowledge areas are that you need to study for. We're coming out with a new an official study guide that will be web-based, so people can see what you need to focus on and where different resources are to study, so you can see where your weaknesses are and what you need to study at. So
yeah, needless to say, I've been looking. I've actually got the exam candidate manual up in front of me. You're right. Well, there's 10 different knowledge categories, it seems, from conceptual foundations, data fundamentals, cartography, data acquisition. I mean, it sounds like the things that you do every day at work. Data manipulation, analysis, database design. That's a good one, an important one. App development. So that's an interesting one. I have done. I mean, all of us who are Esri users, we kind of point and click, and suddenly you've got an app. Are you looking for something more robust, or is that enough?
So again, I'm not privy to all the questions. I have taken the practice exam myself, but just to kind of see what was on there since I was on the board. Oh, I should take this and see what my level is. The exam is software agnostic, so it's not going to be specific to Esri stuff or anything like that. So it's going to be more. So it's going to be more like theoretical and steps like that.
Yeah.
Well, no, there'll be some detail in there, but like I said, it's software agnostic. So
okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
All right. I see the weighting for that one's 7%. It seems like the ones with 11% is data acquisition, manipulation, and analytical methods. Those seem to be the emphasis. Oh, hang on, it's 15% for, of course, geospatial data fundamentals. Okay. All right. Cool.
Yeah. The thing is, you have to have at least 4 years of experience working in the field before you take. I guess you could still take the test, but you can't become you can't get your certification until you have those 4 years in. So there's that. And we're also working on a pre-GISP program, which would actually be for college students. So it'd be like, like a EIT, engineering training, they have that for engineers. It's kind of like along those same lines. So it'd be like, if you're in college, you can go ahead and take that and become, so you have this other credential right when you get out of college saying that you have this base fundamentals and knowledge. So we're hoping that'll be launched, I don't know, sometime this year. They're working on it, still working on it. So
yeah, okay.
I doubt it personally, because you got to come up with an exam and a committee to build the exam and all that stuff. So
yeah, no, it's really nice to see that there's this support for the serious professionals in the US from this organization. So
yeah,
it's good also that those that really apply themselves can be rewarded, I guess, with this kind of recognition. So
yeah, one thing people struggle with on that, it's interesting because it's not just the exam, but you have to submit a portfolio, which means it's not like you don't show like maps and stuff that you've done like that. It's not that kind of portfolio. It's your education and your experience, your work experience, and then your contributions back to the profession. And it's interesting because most people struggle with that, the contributions to the profession. And it's as easy as attending a conference, becoming a member of like ERISA or some other professional organization, and you can get contributions back to the profession that way. So it's a little easier than people think. So I always find that interesting that people say that they struggle with that. I'm like, you must have a local GIS user group or something like that you can get involved with and just do something with. So
yeah, sure. So I've of course started to fill out my profile.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And even though I've only got 3 months to prepare, I'll still give the exam a shot. I think that will make a funny podcast episode regardless of the outcome. I'll try and be very transparent.
I know somebody that she didn't really study. She thought she had signed up for I think the December exam, but the June was the next one, and she ended up being for that. And she had just graduated college and happened to have all this stuff fresh in her memory. And so she's like, well, I'll just take it. I fail. And she ended up passing it. So
Brilliant.
I thought that was cool. So yeah.
That crossed my mind too, that it's been, I finished my master's in 2010. So I look forward to being owned by this exam and running off with my tail between my legs. But yeah. All right. Yeah, but I guess so. I've been doing GIS, since 2011 in Australia, and I have accumulated a lot of points. It was really nice to review, I guess, all of my contributions. And I think you need to accumulate at least 206 points across all the education, contributions to the profession, volunteering, publications, things like that. And I think it's only because of how long I've been doing it. I think currently I've tallied up 400 points or something. So, and that's not, I haven't really tried especially. So that adds to your point, that it's not just such a daunting task.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. I'm thrilled to hear that you have already started your portfolio. That's great.
Cool. And I hope I'm not at all coming across as somehow sucking up to a member of this organization. I wasn't
No,
intending to do that.
it wouldn't work because I don't have any influence on that one.
All right. Well, good. Maybe we've covered off that one then. So the next item is GIS in America. So I mean, as far as I understand, America's 360 million odd people. So you must be something of a force in geospatial in the world. But in terms of the profession in the country of America, I mean, where to start? What if one was to seek to get a job? I suppose it wouldn't hurt to have a GISP. But once you've got that, is it all word of mouth? Does it matter having a CV? If so, what are some things that would be good to have on it? Get us going here.
Okay, so I guess it depends on where you want to focus. Like, do you want to get government work? Do you want to work for, a state or a county or a city agency? Do you want to work in the private sector in different industries? But that being said, my first recommendation would be wherever you're going, look for those local and regional GIS user communities. Like I said, with NSGIC, the National States Geographic Information Council, there's a state similar thing, like a state consortium of GIS, and they're often mostly made up of the various state agencies that do geospatial work, but there's also county and regional and private sector people in there, and so you'll get involved with them, and most of them have annual conferences and local events and so forth. And so start networking. I mean, networking is your friend. Get to know the people in your area, what they're doing, that kind of thing, and find out what, whatever your particular industry focus is, start finding those people and looking at that. And, check out the data, because a lot of the data's online, right? Pull it in and see what they're doing.
Sure, that's a good idea.
Data.
Yeah.
So that's always good. Also, there's, I said conferences, regional meetups, that sort of thing. I think that's key, is networking.
Is it the GISCI's website that I can find those local chapters, if you like, or what's the website for that?
Start with NSGIC, nisgic.org. So that's the national state. Start with there. There's a list of all the state member agencies. Start there. ERISA also has various chapters. They don't have chapters covering the whole of America. They also have, there's one or two in Canada also. So it's kind of a North American focus, but there are chapters there. And ERISA also has a lot of free resources that are available, and a lot of different webinars and so forth. So you can hop on and join and see who's there. Just start getting familiar with names and who's
perfect. Who. Okay, so anybody from outside of the US can already somehow sign up and participate in online sessions. Okay.
Absolutely. Okay.
That's a great tip. Is there anything else that springs to mind about, or maybe it might be nice to hear about your journey, I guess, as a GIS consultant before you came to be a principal and running a business?
Well, you make it sound really big, but so actually I started, I've been in the industry for a long time, since the 90s. So, and I started working, I was in state government for for quite a while, and then regional government, and then I went into, well, let me back up. So my husband actually started this business. So before we were married,
I deduced that from the the blurb on the website. Yep.
Right. So he started as a surveying business, and so it's geospatial and all that. And then he went to work for the federal government, the U.S. federal government, for NOAA's National Geodetic Survey. So he's a geodesist.
Okay.
And
sorry, what is NO? Is it NOAA?
Yes, NOAA, which does the Weather Channel and weather and all that stuff. That's what most people know them for. But they also have this tiny little agency in there called the National Geodetic Survey.
Awesome.
That, they're the ones that make that create all the datums and that sort of thing.
Very impressive. Yep.
Yeah. So when he did that, he couldn't do the consulting. The company kind of just sat there. He did a few things that he could, but conflict, and plus he's busy working and all that sort of thing. So after we got married, I had left the government agency because I had enough that I could points they call it, that I could retire. But I still have friends. I knew a lot of people, and they're like, "Hey, could you come help us with this work and do this consulting?" And I was like, "Okay, so I'll run it through the business." So I ended up taking over the business from him. So I muscled him out. No.
That's great.
Just kidding. So I just took on the lead role. It's, so it's no longer surveying and that sort of thing, but it was still a geospatial type of thing. So we felt that would be easier than having to go through everything to create a whole brand new business. And so he did all the initial legwork with starting that. But then recently last year we moved from Arizona, the state of Arizona, over to New Mexico. And I went through the process of moving it here. So I do have, some experience in, how to do all this paperwork and the legal requirements, although I did get help because sometimes all these legal things are just a bunch. So I would recommend hiring somebody that knows what they're doing.
Sure.
If you're going to start your own business, I would recommend making sure you have some good people that know what they're talking about and can get you rolling in that.
I think a lot of people are probably, I certainly have flirted with the idea of starting a consultancy, but it is the administrative stuff that's intimidating that kind of stops me, and I think a lot of people.
Yeah. So so there's a lot of places out there now. There's a lot of support for small businesses. So I'm a small business because I'm the whole firm. Although I do have, I'll bring out a few people to do some contract work with me. They'll be like a subcontractor for me if I have like some big jobs, like one I just started. So I have a few people helping me out with that. But yeah, the firm I used, interestingly enough, is called Law, LAW for small. So they're lawyers for small businesses.
Yep.
And so they were very helpful in getting everything moved over here to New Mexico. They also happen to be based out of New Mexico, but anyway. So I definitely recommend making sure you have that. But there's a lot of support for, like I said, here, at least here in America, I think there's a lot of support for small businesses. And we also have the Small Business Administration. They offer a lot of counseling and support that's free for small businesses. I have not used them myself, but I do have a colleague that she used them to start her own business, and she found them very, very helpful. So that's something to look into.
Oh, that's fascinating. I'm taking some notes as you speak. I guess I'm reminded, I remember there was a comparison between how long it takes to set up a small business in the US versus, I don't know, some far-flung, underdeveloped backwater like Australia. I could say that because that's where I'm from. Would you say it's about a month of effort just to get the ducks in a row, administration-wise, and registering it, or?
Well, you can go on your state website and get it kind of set up within a month, but then there's all these other things that may take longer. So, so some things like setting up taxes, if you're going to have employees and that sort of thing, the turnaround, because it's through the state and the feds, it might take a little bit longer while that process is worked out, because they're not always super fast either. So it depends. I applied for a small women-owned business. They call it a DBE, Disabled Business Enterprise. Yeah, I think that's what it's called. And through the states, it took a while because there was a lot of paperwork. So just to get the paperwork together took me several weeks, and a lot of trips to the notary to get your signature notarized. So that took some time, and then it took a little bit longer for them to process and that sort of thing. So it can take some time. It just depends.
Yeah. It sounds like you had a bit of a head start through the network you'd established through your government work. So that also sounds like it's important to have a sense for how much of a name you've accumulated before you.
So my, so like most of my work is just from people I know and I've worked with before. So the contracts.
Yeah.
So plenty to keep me busy right now.
Sure. So I think I remember in our initial exchanges, you said you do a lot of demographic analysis, work with census data. I'd be interested to know a bit of the nature of the work.
Okay, so a lot of socioeconomic having to do with, most of the ones I'm working on now are what they call CEDS, because of course it's an acronym for Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. And these are, it's an economic development plan that usually regional governments, I don't think it's down to county. So regional is usually multiple counties. I'm not sure what the equivalent is in the UK, but I assume you know what geography I'm talking about? Okay. Anyway, so they're, states broken
Local authorities is one term that often comes up in these conversations, is all I can say. They're the lowest level of aggregation. If you know that it's a difficult data collection exercise, if you get down to the local authorities you have to get the data from, I will say that. We usually try to avoid it, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit higher than that. Okay, so it'd be more regional.
Unitary authorities, and anyway, there's a whole hierarchy, but yes.
Yes, it's crazy. So part of what I do, there's other people that do the outreach because it involves a lot of stakeholder input and that kind of stuff. I don't do that because I'm a data person. So I get to do the analysis to show what their current, what are the jobs, what's the population look like, who's moving to the region, who's leaving the region.
Hey, I should be reviewing these outputs.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll be one of them.
That's kind of what I do. And a lot of data visualization. So for the reports, because, I'm a data nerd and people don't want to see a bunch of numbers and tables and percentages because their eyes will glaze over. So I make it fun, easy to understand, graphs, charts, infographics, that sort of thing. So, and now I'm doing story maps. So I did a couple story maps. You can see them on my website, a couple of them.
I saw one. Yep.
Yeah. So those are the kind of work that I'm involved in now. I think I have 2 of those going on right now that I'm also working.
So, because that's a bit of a trend in the UK that I've noticed. It's also still sort of a legal requirement for government reports that you get a long, stuffy PDF with lots of static maps. We are more and more managing to convince government clients to pay for digital delivery, if you like, which is effectively story maps or now Experience Builder. So is that common also in the US?
Yes, we're seeing that more and more. And well, one of the reasons why I've gotten a couple of the more recent ones was because of the story maps that I did previously was, the governments were like, yeah, we don't want to see these long reports anymore. Cool. Some are still requirements. Some federal requirements do have some of that where they need some reporting, but we're seeing them more trending towards more of this digital, easier to consume type of reporting. So yeah, so having those skill sets are great.
Yeah. Okay, it seems like there'll be plenty of work then. Okay. All right. Does OpenStreetMap matter? Sorry to interrupt, but that's a
Oh,
common
no,
one to
no.
volunteer.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm seeing that more and more used, and I think OpenStreetMap would be a very good thing to have a skill set under your belt, to have experience using that and working with it. So yeah.
Okay,
So
cool.
I've heard, like in Arizona, they did a whole thing on GIS for good. And that included, OpenStreetMap, that sort of thing. ERISA has a thing called, have you heard of GIS Core?
Nope.
So GIS CORPS.
Yep.
Corps.
Like the Green Corps.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, like the Green Corps. So GIS Core is also spun off of ERISA. And they do a lot of volunteer work. So it's all volunteer based. So it's doing geospatial volunteer work. And you could sign up to do that, and they'll send you, based on what your interests are and your skills, they'll send a little email out and say, we have someone looking for a volunteer that does this. And so that's another great way to get involved and get some experience working with a different, some sort of client or agent.
Awesome.
That you could share with. So that's another good one.
Okay.
So yeah, OpenStreetMap would be good, leaflet, all those kinds of things.
Okay. No, those are more great tips. I got one final question. So I noticed, for example, in Florida, I was looking in Tampa, and it does seem like there are a number of GIS jobs, but a lot of them are for government agencies, and you need to have either a citizenship or even a security clearance. So I'm wondering really if for foreigners, newbies to GIS in America, government work maybe is not going to commonly be a source of employment. Is that your view as well, or?
Yeah, that may be that. I would say that could be an issue, especially for like federal government jobs. I think that might be more. But when I worked for the Regional Council of Governments in Phoenix, Arizona, which is the largest metro area in Phoenix or in Arizona, we had a lot of non-citizens that worked there, and so some agencies such as that, they will also, depending on the position, they may also assist with getting different type of, I don't know all the forms for
like a visa or the
but
H-1B and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was H-1B. That's the one I think of. So yeah, so they were able to assist with that sort of thing because they need skilled technicians sometimes, and it helps them to bring in that sort of thing. So you could look to that and just check out the research. But I think the federals might be the hardest one because of the different, like you said, security clearances and that sort of thing. But working for a firm, one of the private contractors that does work for them, that would be another way in.
I see.
You still do some of that work, but you just may not, if it requires some sort of, depending on the project, you may not be able to get on it because of security clearance, whatever. But
yeah, good. Well, that was a really great whirlwind tour, Jami. And to me, it's a real sign of how friendly and open the geospatial community is in the US, that I can just randomly basically hit you up on LinkedIn. Actually, it was on Bluesky, wasn't it? So that's also a nice endorsement too of that new fledgling social network, how friendly and open that is, and how we're all here. I think it seems to help each other and be positive. So yeah, thanks, Jami.
Exactly. You're welcome. All right. Look forward to chatting with you more sometime. Maybe we'll meet up at a Esri user conference or something like that.
Yeah, I look forward to being there. Yeah, and shaking hands. That sounds good.